I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by...
Evelyn Whitfield. Hello, Miles.
Hello. Dorothy Squires. I always say this, but people out there, who was she married to and what nationality was Dorothy Squires?
Of waiting for you, so tired of longing for you, tired of waiting, saving my love for you.
Dorothy Squires, who sounded genuinely quite tired. That was called So Tired. Dorothy Squires was in fact married to Roger Moore for 10 years, and she was Welsh, which I didn't realise until recently. Now, I should, harking back to the Black Dyke Mills Band, which reminded me of brass bands, obviously, and our centre in Livingston. We are along by Iceland Supermarket, if you want to come and visit us there. Evelyn, what are we moving on to now?
That last article from Guthrie Hutton's book was about golf and other sports in the Leith area. So I've now picked up an extract from a newspaper, and it's from the People's Journal, Saturday the 6th of August 1938, so just shortly before the Second World War. And the title is, Easter Road Should Be Free from Worry This Season. On a striking note of originality, Hibernians launched their 1938-39 campaign. The quest for a better and brighter Hibs side takes a turn that will make old-timers of Easter Road rub their eyes on August the 13th. Gone will be the old familiar all-green uniform, superseded by a new jersey having a green body and white sleeves. Thus is snapped a link with tradition extending back 63 years. And with that reflection in mind, it does seem that Hibernians are convinced that a new era has started at Easter Road. If there's any truth in the change your jerseys, change your luck cry, I suppose it cuts both ways, and Hibs have had little reason to bless good luck these last few years. And coming down to more concrete things, they have assuredly worked hard enough to improve their prospects, and a smile or two from fortune would not come amiss. Undoubtedly, the feeling at Easter Road is confidence.
Marvellous. I love the fact they refer to it as a jersey, which you've got this image of this thick wool kind of
they
shirt.
Call it a strip now, of course.
That's right, a
yes,
strip and a shirt. And it's I'm quite amused by the fact that there's this huge controversy almost that they've changed their strip after 60 years.
63, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, they change the strip, well, not every year, but quite regularly.
Yes,
I think it's quite often a marketing
to do with
thing.
merchandising, yes.
We're going to have more readings. As I say, a lot of these readings go back quite some time, but I think we'll have some. Have we got any more from newspapers, Evelyn, for late?
Yes.
Good, excellent.
Yes, we do.
We're going to have, now this is a bit of an odd one. This is Johnny Dennis, who I've not heard of before. His novelty swinglet, and it's called Dream. I think the novelty part was that he not only sang, but he whistled. Well, he was getting a bit scratchy at the end there, to be honest. And I knew that record was going to be not in the best condition, but I was just quite intrigued by Johnny Dennis and his novelty swingette. A little bit more sport, Evelyn.
Yes, this is another sports story from the People's Journal of August 1938, and it's entitled Leith Cheery. Though an atmosphere of cheerful expectation is evident from Meadowbank headquarters, it has to be tempered by cautious qualifications. Leith's signing intentions have barely been completed yet, for up to date Peter Kerr has only 12 players under his charge. Before they can be marked down as serious challengers in the league race, I fancy they'll have to augment that total a little. But the nucleus of a good workmanlike side is certainly there. 7 of last year's lot will be on duty again, and with 2 exceptions, Leith can field their previous defence and middle line, always the best part of the side. The new men, MacDonnell and Cairns, could not show less ability than the previous occupants of their berths. Oh dear. I don't anticipate Leith having a great deal of anxiety with the rear divisions, but Peter Kerr may have some worrying moments trying to find the best combination in front. Young Jimmy and Duffy will hold the wing berths all right, but between them Peter has to sort out 2 centres, Donoghue and Doyle, and 2 inside rights, Kinnair and Robertson, the Tronent juniors. Till Leith get their attack straightened out, they must necessarily be in the doubtful class. But it's hard to say how they may turn out. A fortunate move here or there and things may go very smoothly. The port officials at least have great hope they can manage it, and I'd be the last to deny their knack of picking the right ones.
I think the term damned with faint praise is applicable there. Workmanlike team. I mean, it's all... We forget actually exactly how many teams, the football teams, there were about the place. Junior teams, the work teams. There seemed to be several Leith teams around the link, lots and lots of people playing. And we've got, on our archive, we have a splendid archive of nearly 3,000 photographs. We have lots of local football teams, and also, of course, Edinburgh Dynamos, which was a women's football team. We're going to have it's quite a well-known record, this. Istanbul, not Constantinople. Well known anyway. How exotic. I feel warmed by that, Istanbul. I can't barely say the word. Evelyn, we're going to get on to a real Leith character, and one that people still talk an awful lot about, don't they?
Yes, indeed. This is a newspaper article. It's the Scottish Daily Express in March 1968. And the character is Willie Merrilees, a very well-kent name, a well-kent face, in Leith particularly. The title is Crowds Cheer for Willie and his bride. A cheering crowd greeted Chief Constable Willie Merrilees and his bride, Miss Roberta Dayhoff, when they stepped proudly into the sunshine after their wedding in South Leith Parish Church today. For 10 minutes, the entrance to the church was jammed with well-wishers, anxiously craning their necks to get a better view of the newlyweds. For the children, all 400 of them, chosen from various homes and institutions in Edinburgh, it was a day to top all days. For the 69-year-old, Lothians and Peebles police chief and his bride had laid on a special reception at Leith Assembly Rooms with plenty of lemonade, buns and ice cream. There was hardly a vacant seat in the church for Leith's social wedding of the year. More than 600 people crammed into the building, many standing in the aisles to hear the couple make their vows. Mr. Merrilees arrived bang on time, wearing full Highland dress. He occasionally cast a backward glance at the door through which his bride would enter, but he wasn't kept waiting long. Miss Dayhoff appeared within minutes, wearing an elegant powder blue full-length brocade dress with matching cape, and carried a bouquet of orchids and hyacinths. Her bridesmaids, 19-year-old Miss Van Stolk and Mr. Merrilees' 21-year-old granddaughter Margaret, chose full dresses of buttercup yellow. During the ceremony, conducted by the Reverend C.D. Stewart Brown, Dr. Reverend C.D. Stewart Brown, the hymn Jesus Loves Me was sung at Mr. Merrilees' request for the children. Then the couple, preceded by Mr. Merrilees' brother Tom, who's 65, who was the best man, and the 2 bridesmaids emerged from the church to be greeted by 2 pipers and the loud cheers by hundreds of people who had lined the street, waiting patiently for the ceremony to finish. A lucky horseshoe was presented to the bride by 8-year-old Francis Rymer of King's Road, Portobello, who was immediately given a big kiss by the groom. Then Mr. Merrilees' dog, Greyfriars Bobby, got his nose into the picture when he suddenly appeared from nowhere and nestled into his master's arms as the happy couple posed for pictures. The chief's dog was presented to him after taking part in the film Greyfriars Bobby. After much handshaking, well-wishing and more cheering, the couple climbed into a black Rolls-Royce and drove the short distance to the assembly rooms. There they were greeted by the children who'd arrived minutes before in a convoy of buses. It's a day to be remembered by a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think we need a larger studio for some of these broadsheet newspapers. They are huge, aren't they? You forget how big these things were. I mean, Willie Merrilees was such a central character to the history of Leith, wasn't he?
Mm.
And an unusually, shall we say, not the tallest of policemen, well known as being.
I think he was particularly short in stature, actually.
Yeah. And they do say that.
Full of character.
Yes,
Feisty
absolutely.
chap.
Yeah. And there is the story, which I'm sure people won't mind me relating, that he rescued people from falling into Leith Harbour, and this is how he got into being in the police. He got himself known, and they do say, I've heard them say, actually he was paying them to jump in. I'm sure that's just one of these tales, isn't it?
Apocryphal tales.
Apocryphal tales, indeed. I've got we've got no 78s of this artist, which I find strange, actually. I suppose maybe he wasn't as popular in Scotland. But this is from an LP, a Music for Pleasure LP. Do you remember those? And of course it's George. You're listening to Thelma FM, and you were listening to George Formby, and it was Leaning on a Lamppost. Other hits of his, of course, was the rather rude, actually, but then it's in the mind of the listener, isn't it, with My Little Stick of Blackpool Rock. The Window Cleaner, I'm just looking down here. There's an intriguing one. Oh, of course, there's Mr. Woo's A Window Cleaner Now, which I probably can't play anymore. But there's this very strange one. Dare I play this one, Evelyn? Dare I play Frigid Anne Fanny? Well,
I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
No, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? Moving away from George Formby, what have we got there, Evelyn?
This is another newspaper article, but it's from 1961, and it's about the Leith Pageant. I'm sure lots of people have fond memories of the Leith Pageant in its early days. And this is it's from the Leith Gazette, August 12th, 1961. Plans are made for the pageant. Next week we'll see the 400th anniversary of the landing at Leith of Mary, Queen of Scots, and her 4 Marys and their triumphant journey, cheered all the way by loyal inhabitants of the port, through Leith to Lamb's House, where she was entertained before moving on to take up residence as Queen of Scotland in the Palace of Holyrood House. Accordingly, it will be fittingly celebrated by the annual pageant, to take place next Saturday, and the scene will be recreated with old age pensioners taking the principal roles. They will land at Leith Port and travel by coach to Lamb's House in the morning before the main part of the pageant, the parade, in the afternoon. It will, states Sir Andrew Murray, the organiser, recall the history of the port uninterrupted for the past 400 years, during which time such a fantastic number of changes have been wrought. We're trying to recapture the scene of Mary and the 4 Marys, Queen Mary and the 4 Marys arriving at Leith, he explained. Contemporary reports were not enthusiastic about the weather when she arrived, and her introduction, or rather reintroduction to Scotland, was celebrated in a drab fog off the 4th. The same or more seems likely this year. Subject to suitable tides, the arrival will take place at 10 a.m. on Saturday, August the 19th, before they move off in their carriages, advertising the parade in the afternoon. And preparations are well underway, and the Old People's Council and the old folks themselves are busy preparing for the event.
And I believe they were based at Lamb's House, weren't
They
they?
were.
So that was 1961,
Yes.
you said. I have to explain to people that are listening in that Evelyn has a whole stack here of yellowing newspapers and a magnifying glass, and she's doing a magnificent job of getting through those. We're going to have a bit of a musical break now. We're going to have a few records in a row, but we start with Oh What a Beautiful Morning with Nelson Eddy, and then we have Boogie in C by the Sky Rockets Orchestra, which promises a lot. I wonder if it actually delivers on that. But Nelson Eddy, baritone, we all know about Nelson Eddy. Here he is.
Bright golden haze on the meadow, there's a bright golden haze on the meadow. The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning, oh, what a beautiful day. I got a beautiful feeling, everything's going my way.
I'm going to fade out of that one a little bit early because that was a little bit too crackly even for our tastes here. We'll go straight to Artie Shaw, and it's Deep Purple, and it's all it says is a great female voice on here. All it says is vocal refrain, which is quite annoying.
Purple falls over sleepy garden walls, and the stars begin to flicker in the sky. Through the mist of a memory, you wander back to me, breathing my name with a sigh.
Oh, that was rather nice, wasn't it? Deep Purple, Artie Shaw with vocal refrain. We get no more information than that. You are listening to Thelma FM. We are the broadcasting arm of the Living Memory Association and Reminiscence and Oral History Project, based in Edinburgh. We were established in 1986, and we are broadcasting from a small back room in the Little Shop of Memory in Ocean Terminal. Evelyn, you were giving me a nice memory about Deep Purple there, not the band.
The name Deep Purple just reminded me of a trip I made from Cooper in Fife over to Edinburgh with a friend on a day out in the early 1960s. And there was a shop on Princess Street called Cadbury House. Now, I seem to remember ice cream flavours were a bit traditional in the small country town of Cooper, but this Cadbury's House offered the most exotic flavours of ice cream imaginable. And if you ordered a Deep Purple, it came in a tall sundae glass, and it had blackberries on top and lots of blackberry sauce trickling all the way through it. I can still taste it.
I think we should stop the show and go and get an ice cream. What have you got for us there?
Now, there was a mention of Lamb's House there, and this is a newspaper article of when Lamb's House was first opened. It's from the Despatch in October 1962. The Queen Mother heard Leith old folks singing "Haste You Back" for her when she opened officially Lamb's House yesterday. The house is the premises of the Edinburgh and Leith Old People's Welfare Council. Lord David Stewart, son of the 4th Marquess of Bute, gave Lamb's House to the National Trust for Scotland in 1958. Its exterior fully restored, it's now leased to the Old People's Welfare Council, who have adapted it internally for use by their Leith branch. At the courtyard approach to Lamb's House, the Queen Mother was received by Lord Provost Sir John Gregg Dunbar of Edinburgh and the Reverend Dr. Ronald Selby Wright, Chairman of the Council. The Queen Mother, smiling warmly at the cheering, flag-waving crowds, wore a wine-coloured velvet coat, a matching silk dress and a feathered hat with a brooch. After declaring the house open, the Queen Mother toured the building. The royal visitors saw the recreation rooms, hairdressing department, physiotherapy exercise rooms and canteen. She also heard 300 old folk singing "Haste Ye Back," and she was visibly moved.
That's fantastic. And that was 1962,
Yes.
I believe you said, which wasn't... We're going to have some more Lonnie Donegan. We're going to have the Battle of New Orleans.
Well, this year the story about the Battle of New Orleans, which was fit between the Yankees, of course, and them there English people, in which the British came off rather ignominiously. Means they never done no good, no how, all right? Shut up. Right. Well, in 1814 we took a little trip along with Colonel Packham down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans and we fought the blooming British in the town in New Orleans. Well, we fired our guns and the British kept a-coming. There wasn't nigh as many as there was a while ago. Well, we fired once more and they began a-running on down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico.
That was Lonnie Donegan and the Battle of New Orleans. That is a record I remember being played on Junior Choice. Ed Stewpot Stewart in the 1960s and 70s. You've got a kind of lead-on article, haven't you? From
This
the last
is
one
about Lamb's House. It's a kind of unusual article. It's from the Christian Science Monitor in May 1963. It was written by Margaret Adams, written for the Christian Science Monitor. But it's about Lamb's House, brightening later years. It is as an oasis of light in a desert of night's darkness, when, turning the corner of a long unlit lane bordered by high, dingy warehouses, the tall white building, which is Lamb's House, comes into view. The many small and illuminated windows up and down its soaring walls shine forth a welcome. This was the house in which Mary, Queen of Scots, stayed briefly on her arrival from France 400 years ago at the shore of Leith, before proceeding to Holyrood House. And the well-built house of Andrew Lamb, merchant, has survived. But it's no ancient monument at which tourists come to gaze. It's a living, pulsating centre, where a social experiment of great significance is being carried out amongst the senior citizens of the Port of Leith. And it's smilingly presided over by Margaret Bain, convener of the Leith branch of the Edinburgh and Leith Old People's Welfare Council. Mrs. Bain is a woman of boundless energy, lively, outgoing imagination, with the happy gift of inspiring others with her own refreshing enthusiasm. Above all, she has an all-embracing love for people of mature years, for whom she thinks there is nothing too good, nor any work too hard to make it so. After years of search for suitable premises for the work, although it went on in those that were not suitable, she found that Lamb's House might solve the problem. But it was in a state of shocking disrepair. To restore it might have seemed impossible to some, but not to Mrs. Bain. "I've always been interested in old buildings," she told me when I saw her at the office in Lamb's House, with its white walls and red carpet. "And my husband and I have had a 15th century house successfully restored." Here, she told me, in answer to my query as to how she managed to combine the roles of social worker and homemaker, that was made possible by cutting out non-essentials, by careful planning and the services of an excellent housekeeper. A picture of Crookston Old House, Heriot, showed how charmingly it had been restored. So you see, it wasn't difficult for me to visualise what could be done. But as Mrs. Bain recounted more of the story, it was evident that all this hadn't come about without much effort. The overcoming of obstacles, the solving of many problems, and sheer hard work, plus a series of what seemed like miracles. Her husband, a writer to the Signet, is as enthusiastic as she is in the cause of the old folks. He did all he could to encourage and help her in the work. In 1958, Lord David Stewart gave Lamb's House to the National Trust for Scotland on condition that it be made available to the Leith branch of the E&L OPWC. They in turn were to supply the funds for the restoration. But we didn't have any funds, said Margaret Bain, until, out of the blue, came our first donation, a cheque for £5,000, or in those days, $14,000. Others followed from various sources, organisations, public funds, individual and collective efforts, until a total of £45,000 was reached. That, of course, was only a beginning. For a project of this kind, funds continually require replenishing. The restoration completed in September 1962, the problem of recruiting staff was solved almost as soon as the need was made known. Ladies literally flocked to our aid, confided Mrs. Bain, and now we have 160 voluntary helpers, including herself, she could have added, and 3 paid staff, all working together in the greatest harmony. We call ourselves Operation Cooperation, and all is carried through on a sound business basis. Lamb's House was officially opened by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, on October the 18th, as we heard in the last article, 1962. It was a happy occasion with Her Majesty going among the members and chatting informally with many of them. At the opening ceremony, Queen Elizabeth paid tribute to the enthusiastic energy and generosity of the Leith community, of which Mrs. Bain is the chairman, and spoke of the house being now a busy scene of countless activities, whereby older people were being made to feel that they are still a real part of the community. It was almost a bee in my bonnet too, when planning the centre, said Mrs. Bain, that it must have a wider significance than being merely a social club. It must, for instance, provide amenities such as baths, washing machines, and facilities for drying clothes, sadly lacking in many of the members' homes. Other services include hairdressing for the women and barbers for the men. Lunches and teas are served by voluntary helpers in the beautifully decorated dining room at a nominal cost, from gaily coloured plates, cups and saucers. Mrs. Bain has taken part in social work for a long time. My mother was a minister's daughter, she told me, and I was brought up in the Good Samaritan tradition. Her work with the Red Cross during the war varied from scrubbing floors to acting as publicity officer. For her services to Polish refugees, she was decorated with the Gold Cross of Merit of Poland. When 5 years ago she was asked to undertake the governorship of the Leith branch of the OPWC, after doing much work within the Edinburgh branch, the plight of the old people in Leith was acute. Many of the younger generation had moved to new housing schemes, and about 20,000 were marooned in the old slum-condition houses. On our very doorstep, as Mrs. Bain put it. The club at that time was in the doldrums, but under the lively leadership of Margaret Bain, membership increased. But the premises were woefully inadequate. Now, with beautifully restored Lamb's House, decorated and centrally heated as their headquarters, with its TV lounge, games room, recreation hall, its many amenities, plus its varied activities, the story is a happy one.
Well, that's actually a very well-written article, wasn't it? And Mrs. Margaret Bain, what a redoubtable woman.
She certainly sounds a very energetic lady.
And it's interesting to hear what about the Polish connection as well.
Yes.
Because we kind of think that Polish people coming into Edinburgh is a recent thing, but far from it. It's been going on for many years. Of course, Lamb's House evolved and I think is now Life Care in Stockbridge. You are listening to Thelma FM, and Evelyn is reading from a whole stack of newspaper clippings, books. We have an extensive library here at the Little Shop of Memory in Ocean Terminal. Lots and lots of books about Leith and Edinburgh and the past. You're welcome to come in and have a cup of tea and sit down on the sofas here and have a good look through. We're going to have another musical break, and I'm playing the other side of Artie Shaw because Deep Purple one side and Begin the Begin on the other side. So we're going to have that, and then we're going to have our oldest record so far in our collection. But let's have Artie Shaw first. You're listening to Thelma FM, and that was Artie Shaw, and that was Begin the Begin. We are playing, well, pretty much all 78, and you will have to bear with them because these 78s have been well used and well played, and we have an extensive collection of them, and we are playing them. These aren't MP3 files. These are actually the records themselves. So you're getting their history as well as their music in those crackles. Evelyn, we've got memories about Leith.
And back to the pageant again. And these are photo stories. The first one is Leith's own jazz band was on hand at Saturday's procession. This is from the Leith Gazette in 1963, to provide some hot music for the people who lined the streets. Story's Alley Jazz Band, in the picture, had as one of its main attractions two charming Charleston girls who won the prize for the best individual fancy dress in the pageant. They're Anne Crombie and Senga Purvis, both of New Haven. Lovely dressed up people, and they've got all their instruments on the back of the lorry as well.
And in fact, we've got a photograph.
I'm sure I've seen that
Story
photo.
Alley
Yes.
Jazz band from
Yes.
the festival. The
So
pageant.
that's in Thelma's photo archive.
Yes, that's
which
indeed.
people can look at.
Indeed, thank
Yes.
you for plugging that, Evelyn. Yes, www.livingmemory.org.uk is a really good website, and on there you can find our 3,000 photo archive through Edinburgh Collected.
The other little picture here is another entry in the horse section was a hand-operated fire wagon supplied by the South Eastern Fire Brigade. This was the first time that the wagon had left Leith Fire Station for many years. It's seen travelling up Easter Road. And you can see the two firemen in their helmets sitting on the back of this open wagon, which is pulled by two lovely white horses with all their harnesses on.
I mentioned earlier that these are all old 78s we're playing here. We probably have around 500 now. Some of them we can't really play because they are beyond, really. But this one, which is exceedingly crackly and is very thick record, is by Billy Williams, and it's got the great title of The Worst of It Is, I Like It, which is a little bit saucy. Now, bearing in mind that Billy Williams, who was a musical star and played the Royal Variety performance in 1912, he actually died in 1915. So this record we've dated to 1913. So it's 106 years old. So you'll have to bear with it because it is a little crackly, and who wouldn't be after that length of time?
Oh, why do all the poets always say that love is blind? I'm after every little bit of love that I can find. It's like a lovely tonic, yet the doctors tell you this. that it is very dangerous to have a simple kiss. But the worst of it is I like it, I do. Having a few nice juicy sips with some young maiden's cherry lips. I've had a few in my time, I'm alive and kicking too. The doctors say that kissing's bad, but I'm all right with the lot I've had. The worst of it is I like it.
Billy Williams from 1913. That is unbelievable to think that's 106 years ago. You wouldn't think records were about 106 years ago. Evelyn, we've got one last piece before we go.
This is another Leith Pageant story, and these stories are from a scrapbook collection of newspaper articles, and this one is from the Leith Gazette in 1964. With plans in hand for an even bigger and better pageant than last year's record event, Mrs. Margaret Bain and her team of helpers have their eyes fixed firmly on a far horizon and a target of £1,000. Pageant Day is Saturday the 30th of May. That was in 1964. The accent this year was on the air, said Mrs. Bain, honorary convener of Lamb's House, at a press conference earlier this week, and inspired by the offers of a Royal Air Force helicopter. Her committee had coined the slogan, "Leith flies high, the sky's the limit," to sum up their aims. The response so far has been absolutely overwhelming, said Mrs. Bain, and one of the main features of the pageant will be the cooperation of the armed services. An air display is to be given by a crew manning the helicopter at Victoria Park, New Haven Road. The main aim behind this innovation is to draw more people away from the central part of the port, and by doing so make it easier for the collectors to move more freely with the crowds. Army representation will come from the 278th Lowland Division Royal Artillery, with pipes and drums and military band, 4 or 5 vehicles and gun displays, Army cadets from the Royal Navy Flag Officer Scotland, and Northern Ireland has come on offer of a band from HMS Caledonia, Rosyth, and a display by Naval Cadet. The RAF are to provide a pipe band and a walking contingent of 50 men, as well as a lorry-mounted air-sea rescue launch. They certainly put a lot of trouble into organising that event, didn't they?
That's a real assault of things going on there. Thank you very much, Evelyn. You've done a sterling work with your massive pile of scraps of paper and everything there. We have got Rosemary Clooney, and it's Haven't Got to Worry, which I think is a very good message. You are listening to Thelma FN, and please carry on listening. We've got lots of reminiscence, and this has been about Leith and its history. Here we go. Rosemary Clooney, George's aunt. Don't forget, Evelyn.
Birds can fly, so can I. I'm so happy I'm flying high. Haven't got a worry to my name. She's my friend, he's my pal. Everybody's my guy and gal. Haven't got a worry to my name. I do everything I do with brand new rhythm. Tell those lucky stars I'm moving right in with them. Fly the flags, ring the bells. What a future my fortune tells. Feel so free I'll never be the same.